tonight, and I would like to give everybody the opportunity to speak. I am going to ask each member to actually introduce themselves when it's their turn. If you could identify not only your name, but the role that you play in town. As I'm sure that there are going to be a lot of people who are watching this who have not seen many of these faces before. Once everybody on our panel has an opportunity to talk about the topic, I am going to open it up to our school committee members to ask questions of the panelists and or share any information or thoughts that they have. And then I am going to open it up to public comment. I'm going to recognize going back and forth between live participants who are in the room as well as participants who are on Zoom, and we'll be going back and forth just so that there is equity. I will remind anybody who does want to ask questions virtually that we need you to name yourself. We cannot call on anonymous names or made-up names. So thanks for bearing with us. We are not going to be making any decisions here tonight. This is a listening exercise. This is part of some of the information that the school committee is going to be using over the next few weeks. If we need to make any mask mandate policies or edit the policies that we do have. Felt that it was important for the community to see many of the pieces that we're working with. Superintendent?
I just had a question for Mr. Gillette. Are we going to see the participants? Is that part of the problem now too? Because these are just panelists, correct?
It's a webinar, correct?
We won't see the participants.
So how are the Zoom participants going to ask questions?
As we have in the past, we'll recognize them through the participation.
And raise their hand?
And ask them, they'll raise their hand.
So we'll hear them, but we won't see them?
Okay, gotcha. I don't even see a list is what I'm saying. I don't know how many attendees.
We have 94 attendees right now.
Okay, that's what I don't see here, which is different.
Okay.
So you can look, you can.
I could sign on to the Zoom
Yeah.
myself.
And just do no audio, no
I'm
video.
good.
You can do no audio, no video.
But thank
and
you.
see 'em.
No, that's what I was looking here. I'm not seeing the list of participants.
So far we have 11 panelists, 94 attendees.
Great.
I am expecting a few more panelists. I think that was just one.
Okay, great.
So Dr. D'Souza, thank you for joining us. Really appreciate your time here. So I am going to call on the participants individually. As I said before, if you could introduce yourself and the role that you play, and then we'll move into the topic directly. I am going to begin with the people who are in the room. Ms. Mulcahy, can you start us off?
Sure, thank you. My name is Amanda Mulcahy. I'm the occupational health nurse here at the Swampscott district. Would you like me to give a quick town update?
No, I think we're first just going to talk about names and roles.
Okay.
No, I think we should jump right into it because we're going to wait because we're not sure that we have participation yet, that we can hear them. So we're going to just jump right into the discussion.
Okay.
So you're on the hot spot in the first seat.
Thank you. So I think let me just first start by saying that, as we all know, the Delta variant is spreading quickly. Here in town in the past, let's see, let me just pull something up real quick, I apologize. So here in town in the last 4 weeks, there's been 34 new cases of positive individuals, which actually made our incident rate which was reported on 8/16 up to 8.9% with a percent positivity of 1.33. That is a large jump because just weeks prior, it was at 7.9%. I believe like 7.6, and then before that we had no cases for a little period of time. So over the past 4 weeks, we've seen a big jump in cases. Good thing is that our vaccination rate here in Swampscott is really good, with 82% of individuals who are eligible with the first dose, and fully vaccinated individuals at 77%. I did receive some information about a little bit more of a breakdown for our targeted range, which is our students here in the town that we were worried about. And so for first dose, for eligible individuals from the 12 to 15 range who have received the first dose, we're about 86%, which is a great number, and 16 to 19 first dose is about 94%. For full vaccination status for 12 to 15, we're at 77%, and for fully vaccinated 16 to 19-year-olds, we're about 86%. That is great numbers, which is what we want to encourage people to continue to get vaccinated. We here at the school has asked for people to actually self-identify or report if they've been vaccinated in students. We just sent out a reminder yesterday, and we got 145 new individuals who reported their vaccination status, which is great. So here in the high school, we have about 145 students who have reported that they've been vaccinated, and at the middle school, about 49. I'm not sure if that email went out to the middle school quite yet, but it's something that we're in the process of trying to get out. So, we're in another pandemic surge of the Delta variant right now, and my recommendation is that we do mandate a mask wearing here at K through 12 for all teachers, students, staff, and visitors. And that's because our most vulnerable is the children under 12 age, and we know that the variant is also has breakthrough cases, which is fully vaccinated individuals who can become positive. This is also supported by the CDC. The CDC released on August 5th, that in addition to universal indoor masking, the CDC recommends schools maintain also 3 feet of physical distancing. But they also said that masks should be worn within the schools. Universal indoor masking by all students age 2 and older, staff, teachers, visitors of K-12 schools, regardless of their vaccination status. This was also supported by the American Academy of Pediatrics, who also is in full support for masking individuals K through 12 despite their vaccination status. Thank you.
Okay, I appreciate that, thank you. Chief Archer. Chief, can you also explain, since you're not usually at school committee meetings, how you fit into all of this?
Sure, hi. Good evening. I'm Graham Archer. I'm the Town Emergency Management Director, and I also lead the emergency management team that we've convened since the beginning of the crisis. We meet regularly to discuss, measures that the town can take, out more broadly than the schools. So I recognize that the schools are a unique. It's a unique setting. So there are going to be a lot of variables and a lot of factors that we're going to need to discuss here. The emergency management team is definitely here to support you guys in your decision on this matter in any way that we can. Where possible, we'd like to see some similarity between the approach we take in other town facilities and other town spaces, that as much as possible to avoid confusion between what the town is doing more broadly and what the schools are doing. But that said, we understand that the schools are a very different entity. So I'm eager to hear some input and offer any insight that I have from my experience with the emergency management team and the directions that we've been taking. But as Amanda said, with this new Delta variant, things are changing rapidly. So it's definitely going to take a lot of collaboration and and us being nimble to try to stay up and stay ahead of it.
Thank you. Thanks. Mr. Harris.
Hi there. I'm Craig Harris. I'm a school psychologist in the district, and I'm at the high school mainly. I'm coming at this from looking at social emotional concerns and from hearing from students themselves. I first want to validate anyone who has some concern around social emotional growth with masks. It has some face validity on being concerned. How can you learn the basics of identifying emotions and being able to see someone if a person is wearing a mask? Thankfully, the research that has come out has shown that for children 3 and older, the primary clue on what a person is thinking and the primary way to see an emotional state is through the eyes, and then comes tone and facial expression. So for children 2 and under, the calculus is different. They would not be able to make the developmental gains that they need if everyone was masked. The research suggests that students 3 and older will be able to make normal developmental gains with talking to unmasked adults after school, with keeping safe distance, and by masking during the school day. That being said, there are some students who are at risk for students in our SPED population or who have speech and language concerns. ASHA, though, the American Speech and Hearing Association, has said that if masks are able to mitigate the spread and stop school closures, that is the utmost priority. Being able to stop students from being out of school is more important than having students be unmasked in school. In my personal experience, I would say that anything to stop students from being absent and from missing in-person instruction is going to be key. I'm not a health professional, so I can't talk to the calculus there, but I can talk to both the stress it places on students when they miss school, when they're out of their community, where they're out of their routine. And I can also speak to the stress that it places on teachers if they're expected to help keep all of their students at the same level, at the same pace, if they have students coming in and out due to infection or quarantine or anything else going on. If masks can help with that, then I would say masks would be a benefit. In terms of what I've heard directly from students, I have heard some anxiety around other students being unmasked. As we all know, the masks are for other people. We wear masks for other people, not to protect ourselves. And I've heard some concerns around students saying, I'm concerned if other people are unmasked around me, especially if they have immunocompromised or older people living with them in the home. Of course, the calculus, again, may change with vaccinations at the moment, but that's what I've heard from students. I have not heard any student yet say that wearing a mask is such a detriment that they can't stay in school. I also have heard students understand the anxiety of others and a willingness to mask to protect others in their community. Personally speaking, as a person who is in person from the start of last school year, from the very first school day, I know the mask can be itchy, hot, and uncomfortable, but I also know it was an expression of care for the students that I was working with and for the other people that I was around. And ultimately, I feel like it added a layer of protection. The last thing I would say is, as a person who understands behavior, and I think all the teachers will also understand this, it is very easy to start more restrictive and then ease up, then go in the other direction. So I would add that into the calculus and the decision making, because if we start with no mask mandate and then need to go into one because there are increasing cases, that would be more difficult, especially in a school year where we desperately need consistency and we need that assurance of safety and of sameness as much as possible. I would say the directionality does matter. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so I'm gonna go to our panelists on Zoom now. Do you think that we're set up for that?
We're not, so I'm gonna ask you to record, I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna try something. You hit record on this, just so you can get this recorded. And then,
On the computer or the cloud? Okay,
what I'm gonna do is I'm going to, pull my mic up to my computer so you can hear.
Oh, Joe, I'm sorry.
Which could cause some feedback, so I apologize, we're getting this job.
so, do you think I should start, or do you want me to wait another second or two?
Good job, I'm gonna have to stand up here, that's
Oh, all right. Mr. Vaughn, could you unmute, and let's see if we can start there?
Can I just test this mic? Okay.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Maybe.
I think the rest of you guys should mute on this.
Ready to go?
Yes, everybody muted here?
These.
Everybody muted?
I think what we just learned is let them talk and don't respond to them. All right, Jeff.
I'll take that as a hint. Thank you all for this opportunity to offer a statement on this important matter. Last night, the Swampscott Board of Health held their monthly Board of Health meeting, and during that meeting, the Board of Health voted to make a recommendation to the Swampscott Public School District that masking should be in place indoors for all students, teachers, staff, and visitors, regardless of vaccination status, for grades pre-K through grade 12, as per the Centers for Disease Control Prevention's recommendation. This recommendation is also in alignment with the recommendations of the American Academy of Pediatrics as well as the Massachusetts Medical Society. Although this pandemic, the key disease prevention and mitigation measures remain the same, and these measures include the consistent and correct use of masks, social distancing, adequate ventilation of indoor spaces, hand washing, proper cleaning, stay at home when you're sick, getting tested, and also getting vaccinated when you are eligible. The current surge of the Delta variant is particularly concerning because the Delta variant is roughly 50% more contagious than the Alpha variant. It carries a higher level of virus, which leads to far less exposure time. And vaccinated individuals can still contract and transmit the virus to others. On July 27th, the CDC released recommendations that all persons, including those who are fully vaccinated, should wear masks in indoor public settings in areas where COVID-19 transmission is high or substantial. We are in the red, as per CDC. We are in high community transmission. Some of this information Amanda had mentioned earlier, but I'll go through it just briefly. After nearly 7 weeks of no cases in Swampscott, there have been an update 38 new lab-confirmed cases in the last 3.5 weeks. These are new cases. These new cases include those who are fully vaccinated, as well as individuals under the age of 19, some of whom are not yet eligible to be vaccinated. While vaccinations continue to be highly effective in preventing serious illness, hospitalizations, and deaths in those who are fully vaccinated, those who are under the age of 12 are still not eligible to get vaccinated, and those with medical conditions that prevent them from getting vaccinated are all at risk of these serious conditions from COVID. There are students and staff that have medical conditions that exclude them from getting vaccinated, and there are others that are immunocompromised and at higher risk of serious complications due to COVID. Again, masks continue to be a proven public health prevention measure and an incredibly crucial part of continuing to mitigate the spread of COVID, particularly indoors. Finally, while the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education has stated that all schools are required to be in person full-time 5 days a week for 21-22. Due to the rise in cases of the highly transmissible Delta variant, in order to reduce the spread of COVID-19 in the community, as well as maintain safe in-person learning in schools, both the Swampscott Board of Health and the Swampscott Health Department staff recommend that masking should be in place indoors for all students, teachers, staff, and visitors, regardless of vaccination status, for grades pre-K through 12. That being said, please keep in mind that this recommendation will be updated if and when the current situation with Delta variant improves. However, we must all continue to work together in order to provide a safe and healthy learning environment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Vaughn. Just give me 1 second. Okay. I am going to turn this over to you, Dr. D'Souza. If you could unmute yourself.
I'm not sure I was Ron was fantastic. I think there is consensus across. Can you all hear me, by the way?
Dr. D'Souza, I know that the participants on Zoom can hear you. We in person cannot. It's very light. Very light.
Can you increase this mic to speaker? Yep. Mic to the speaker. Check. Is that up as high as it can be?
That's a lot.
1
higher
2
than
1
what we're
2
hearing.
1 2 1 2. Try again, sorry.
Can you hear me?
Hold on 1 second.
All right, give it a try.
Okay, why don't you go ahead, Dr. D'Souza?
Can you all hear me now?
Very good, thank you.
Yes. Okay. I think Mr. Vaughn covered a lot of what I was going to say. I think, if you look at the consensus across the board, when you look at the CDC, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the Department of Public Health in Massachusetts, the American Academy of Family Practitioners, all of them across the board want students to be in person 100% of the time. And we want kids to be safe. And as much as vaccinations are incredibly important and should be encouraged for those that are eligible, we know that there's a large population that are not yet eligible and hopefully will be at some point this fall. That said, with the Delta variant, there is transmission among vaccinated individuals, and that transmission, certainly, those individuals tend to have milder disease, but those individuals are then susceptible to passing it on to people who may be immunocompromised and cannot respond appropriately to vaccine. Again, the CDC over the last couple days have now approved a booster vaccine for those who are immunocompromised now, and then one for the rest of us in about 8 months after your second dose. Again, this booster vaccine is not going to cover those that are those kids that can't get vaccinated as yet. And so because of this, I am very concerned that allowing kids to not be masked in schools will cause an increase in transmission. We know that over this past school year, the rate of transmission in schools was low, but everyone was masked. With this variant now, I don't know how that will change in the fall if some kids are masked and other kids are not. I think it's also going to be very hard for all of the school nurses to keep track of who's vaccinated, who's not. It's a lot to expect a school nurse or a teacher to walk through the hallway and say, you need to wear a mask, you're okay, and that also, if you think about it, high school and middle school are a lot about assimilation, right? Are kids who are wearing masks, are they going to be targeted somehow? Or are there the kids who are not wearing masks, are they going to be targeted? It's going to be a very difficult thing. I think there are a lot of mitigation techniques that can go into place, and this is an extremely important one. So I agree with all of you about going to school full time and everyone wearing masks. And then we pull back layers as we can, and hopefully we will be able to, but we will have to see how that works over the next several months.
Dr. D'Souza, thank you. For people who are watching this, Dr. D'Souza is our district physician and is part of the Pediatric Associates of Greater Salem. Okay. Ms. Buckland, can I turn it over to you? And don't forget to introduce yourself.
Becca Buckland, grade 2 teacher, also president of the SEA.
Okay, hold on one second. We can't hear you.
This is easy because we echo the sentiments of everyone that has already spoken. I think the two goals that we all can agree on is that we want our kids safe and we want them in school. And in order to do that, we believe in masking regardless of vaccination status pre-K through 12. We took a poll of our members. We had 178 respondents. Close to 60% agreed that pre-K through 12 should be masked. I just think that in the current climate, with the recommendation of the CDC and the AAP, that we need to keep our kids safe and in school. Those are our priorities. If we think back to last year, we were so concerned about having kids not be able to be in school, and it was really difficult for kids to not be in school. It was difficult for teachers. Even tonight, this was and just watching two platforms, multiple platforms are really, really difficult, and we could see that tonight just in how, your mics, our mics. So we really want kids to be in school, and our stance with the union is that we agree with that. We want kids in school, we want kids protected. We want to make sure that people that can't protect themselves, particularly kids that are under 12 and anybody that can't get the vaccine, that we are protecting them. So we know there are breakthrough cases. Just as Dr. I've been reading a lot about breakthrough cases, and I just feel like the best way that we can serve our children and our student population is to make sure that everyone is masked pre-K through 12. Thanks.
This is Becca Buckland. She is the president of the Teachers Association and also here representing specifically the elementary schools. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So I spoke on behalf of the teachers union in general and also elementary school. I think, publicly it's much easier for people to maybe recognize that, yes, it's a no-brainer that we would say in elementary school, we all need to be masked. But we don't live in a bubble, and I think it's really important to recognize that there are siblings and we are outside of the district. So I think it's really important that everyone's masked pre-K to 12. But yes, I teach at the elementary level, and I think obviously I don't think there's much argument there, but I think it's really important that we do this unilaterally pre-K through 12.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask Ms. Ardman and Ms. Comparato. I know that you both are also members of the union and that you are representing the middle school and the high school. And I want to give you an opportunity to speak as well if you have anything to add. Originally, I think I wanted to make sure that there was coverage at all levels in case there was a differentiation. So I'll turn it over to either one of you.
Margaret Ardman. I teach 8th grade science at the middle school. The middle school is a difficult place just because we're going to have a mixture of kids that can and cannot be vaccinated. It becomes difficult trying to keep everybody on the same page. If you're not sure what grade a certain student is in, it just decreases the confusion. I can also say I have family members that live with me that are high risk. If of getting sick from, this Delta variant, even though they've been vaccinated and I've been vaccinated. I would hate to think that any of my students or that any of my family members would get sick because something as simple as a mask could have been worn and decreased that likelihood.
Thank you. Ms. Comparato?
Sue Comparato, I am a high school business teacher, and I just want to add that, just for perspective, in a 2-day span at the high school, I see approximately 120 kids just in my classroom alone. That doesn't include anywhere else I go in the building. And I have no way of knowing who's vaccinated and who's not vaccinated. So if the policy is something where unvaccinated people should wear masks, vaccinated people have a choice, we would have no way of enforcing that because we would have no way to know who should and who shouldn't. So a K-12, pre-K-12 mandate is just makes the most sense, and just as everybody else has said. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, I'd like to recognize Ms. Nia Illingworth. You can unmute. I will come back to Ms. Illingworth.
Hi, my name is Nia Illingworth, and I'm the public health nurse for the Swampscott Health Department. And I was also part of the statement from the Joint Board of Health and Health Department statement in regards to masking from grades pre-K through 12 and everything that Jeff mentioned. I am in support of. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I think I just want to make sure that I have everybody covered here. And I also want to welcome Ms. I'm hoping that I'm going to say your name properly, Madison Deal. She is our newest member of our student reps here on the school committee. And she's, this is a little trial by fire for her. She has never been to a school committee meeting before and is joining us tonight. Thank you very much for being here, and I will look to you to raise your hand during this next session if you have any questions of the panelists. And from there, I am going to turn it over to, before we go to the questions, I'd love to hear Superintendent from you and our Assistant Superintendent.
Sure, be happy to speak. One thing I want to point out to the committee this year is that there will be no remote learning that occurs from home. That is a requirement of the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. So for those who wish to learn from home, they'll have two options: the state virtual online schooling or homeschooling your child. But there will be no remote learning. So I say that as a caveat to the masking considerations that I ask you to consider. Becca and I spoke earlier this week with union leadership. They did a survey of educators. She just reported on that. I did a survey of our entire district, which would include custodians, administrative assistants, food services, ESPs, tutors, and teachers. For that, I received 301 responses, which was pretty impressive. And more impressive, I've heard a lot about what is the vaccination rate of our staff. And of the 301 who responded, we have 97.3% who have been vaccinated. That's 293 of the 301. And I think that deserves a shout out to our teachers, educators, support staff to have that higher vaccination rate. With that vaccination rate, the responses I got asked simply two questions: have you been vaccinated, and which model would you go for? And 52.8%, or 159 respondents, want mask wearing for everyone. 23.6% want mask wearing optional for everyone, and then 13.6% wanted mask wearing for K-6 only. There was an other category of which there are several answers, but I didn't go into that. Those were the big chunks. One of the things that I asked the committee to consider as well, and some of the other panelists have already spoken, is that the recommendation from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education is mask wearing for K to 6. In our district, that doesn't work. We have a middle school that runs 5 through 8. And as Mrs. Arvin said, who's going to be the mask police in the hallways? We have very tall 6th graders, we have very small 8th graders, and I don't think our leaders want to be running through the hall checking for masks the way we used to be chasing lanyards. So my recommendation to the committee would be to mask fully, pre-K to 12, with accommodations. Medical accommodations, working with children with special needs, looking at individual cases if certain students cannot mask for medical or other reasons. I also asked for consideration that we revisit this, maybe Columbus Day, we set a timeline. We revisit it early October and figure out where we go from there. So we do this in small chunks rather than making a decision for the entire year. I don't think we were last year, but certainly I'm concerned about keeping everyone safe and keeping everyone in school. And Ms. Mulcahy will tell you, but I was going to report on it at next week's school committee meeting. We are going with the test and stay program so that if students are close contacts, they would be swabbed 5 days in a row and they would be tested and stay in school. We're not looking at sending students home and quarantining and all that. So in that case, we're in a different place. We're considering pool testing for certain populations. That'll all come out next week. I'm working on filling out the assurances with the state. But we're looking to keep children in school. We did not move all that furniture that is in those boxes back into the classrooms. The only thing that we've moved back into classrooms at the elementary level is area rugs because those are so developmentally appropriate. We are still using desks, except for at the high school where we're using some tables. We're encouraging the elementary teachers to pair students up or put them in small groups for short activities and then go back to rows. So we want to start getting back to normal, but we recognize that we have a variant right now that we have to take seriously. So my recommendation, along with everyone else, which feels really good to be unified, it would be masking up the entire district with accommodations. I say that with a caveat. Ms. Raymond?
I echo what the superintendent has said, and again, I just want to make sure everybody does consider there are going to be students that we have with disabilities that may not be able to wear a mask, students with severe autism, students who are coming in for early developmental screenings or evaluations who are not yet 3 or just 3. Earlier last year when we did have the pandemic, we were actually extremely strict about the mask mandate. I do not recommend that this time, and that we will bring students in for evaluations. We will maintain students in district if they cannot wear a mask. It's a very small, tiny group that we are very successful in teaching everybody to wear a mask. That would just be my recommendation right now, considering our high vaccination rate, and we also know the severe impact that occurred by not having these students in school. So I echo what the superintendent said. Just want to make sure everybody understands that caveat.
That's why I want to highlight, with accommodations, one thing we've learned and we've always known as educators is one size doesn't fit all. And so you can make, I've always said, and we've talked about this, we're in the gray business. There are exceptions, there are accommodations, there are students with specific needs that we're going to accommodate because it's our job to educate. And so I just ask that if you make a policy, we add that language in at the discretion of the professionals.
And we did run a very successful summer learning program with over 300 students where it was mask recommended but not mandated. And 20% were masks approximately, and we did not have any cases. Now the Delta variant is just kind of at the tail end of the summer learning program risen up. But I do know we can be safe with allowing those accommodations for that real small population of students who we have to just consider.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
So who do you recommend is the person who's going to be judging what accommodations or to which students they'll?
I would say medical. Mrs. Mulcahy would be part of as the occupational health nurse. And I would say special needs would be the Assistant Superintendent of Student Services. I mean, this is their area of expertise.
I just want to make sure.
Yeah,
if we think about that, I think we should put it in a policy that it's not, parents saying my kid has this issue. It's, something verifiable or something.
There has to be a process,
yeah.
and it has to be through discussion. And that's what I mean when, it has to be very individual. There are going to have to be conversations that occur.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think if in the policy it says the positions and not the names, we've learned that a policy is longer standing.
Right. But I also then it's up to you guys operationally to develop your procedure for how it all happens. It's not.
Yeah, and that's fine. I would just
Right.
say the caveat is going to be anybody who does not diagnosed with a disability or we haven't evaluated yet that is coming in, especially under the age of 3.
Right. Yes,
I'm
that's
not,
fine.
we are going to have to make
Oh, yeah,
exceptions
for sure.
for that. So I guess what I would say in the world of special education, it's really, we have to be open. We have to think that there's always going to be a case that doesn't fit, well, maybe a very blanket statement, and that's the point. We have to consider every student.
Well, I guess
individually.
for the policy, the whole point is if it's an educational/special educational decision, it's just going to fall under your umbrella, and if it's a medical decision, it'll fall under Ms. Mulcahy's, decision, and then that just leaves it completely operational for your procedures.
I don't anticipate it being a large number. It won't.
I
But it will.
totally agree.
It did happen, and this time we're going to be more. We're going to be accommodating. We did not last time. This time we will.
No, I think if our goal is to keep kids in school,
Right.
our goal is to keep kids in school.
Right.
Yeah.
School committee members, would anybody like to start? Does anybody?
First, Mrs. Raymond, that's great to hear about the integrated preschool. That was a real concern of mine coming in tonight, is how we're going to handle that issue. Being a parent who went through that, you're right. Every single student in that integrated preschool is unique and different. So it's good to hear that we'll have a pretty good plan in place. As far as, thank you. Can't take me anywhere. As far as Ms. Angelakis, I agree 100% with your thoughts and your comments. So I'm just going to read something, and for those who know me, I'm on the kind of opposite end of the spectrum. Although I have nephews and nieces in the system, I have rising college juniors, and I hate that phrase, that's what it is. And as you can imagine, on a college level where you're spending a lot of money, it's been a challenge the last year and a half. And there's been a lot of very interesting discussions throughout, I think, many homes in this community and elsewhere. So, and we've been watching what both of my twin boys' colleges have sent out. So I'm just going to spend 30 seconds and read just a little bit, and I've changed some of the language to change it from campus to community. And I really could have chosen both, in my case, Quinnipiac University and American University. They basically said the same thing. And I'm just going to read this, and I hope the community will really take this to heart, because I do want to remind everyone, our job up here as school committee members is to advocate and keep the students safe. That's our responsibility. Our responsibility lies with the students. It does not lie with the parents. It lies with the students. That's our job. It's a job that I take very seriously, and I can speak for the other 4 members of the committee that take very seriously that job. So if you would, just give me a minute here. Again, this is from American University. This is a time of new beginnings, a new term, a new academic year, the arrival of many students, and finally, a full return to school. The school is already buzzing as the start approaches. This is all possible thanks to our community, which has stepped up and followed the vaccine requirements that are a key part to what we need for a safe return. We know COVID-19 will be with us now and into the future. We must live with it by deploying our best tools, vaccines, and community. The first tool has been deployed with great success, especially in Swampscott, given the numbers that have been discussed earlier. Now we must double down on the values and behaviors of our school community family. We must each do our part every day, knowing our actions impact others, and it is everyone's responsibility to keep themselves and others safe. Our values are strong, and community is our bedrock. Our school district families are an important part of that community. We thank you for your unwavering support, and we ask for your patience and grace as we make our way back. It will not be perfect, as this is a transition for all of us, but we will learn together, work together, and be there for each other. We look forward to seeing many of you at school shortly and are excited to greet your students as they begin this new chapter. That's what I have.
Thanks. Do you have any questions for any of the panelists?
Other than, no, I appreciate you coming. I appreciate you, appreciate the candor. And your knowledge and your expertise is what I think all of us really depend on. We're lucky enough to serve on this board, but none of us are physicians. And we really do rely on the expertise, not only on a national level, but on a real local level. And your thoughts and your comments really weigh 100% heavy with me. So I appreciate your time.
Marshall?
Yeah, coming in tonight, I thought I was going to have a million questions. And I think the panelists really covered almost everything. I was concerned about the preschool. I was concerned about the ability to have some accommodations and not be zero tolerance, but to be able to handle issues that came along. And also, I had similar feelings about putting some sort of a date on this so that we could, agree on a point where we wanted to review this, and I wanted to make sure that, our panelists would be willing to come back at that point and have this discussion again, see if things had changed, see if things, so that it's not just open-ended and that we agree when we want to come back and talk about it. And I don't know, I was kind of thinking, is there a way to, not do 100%? Is there a way for it to be optional? And, but I think just listening to everybody, the biggest thing we want to do is have kids in school. And anything that gets the kids in, doesn't have us doing, 6 feet of distance, but has everybody in the school, has everybody learning, I think is the most important thing. So I just want to thank everybody for coming in as well. And as long as we all just keep meeting and keep our eyes on this, and just keep moving forward. But, there was a lot of information, and it was really great.
Yeah, completely. Obviously you guys are saying the same things I'm thinking. And in addition to getting kids in school, we want to keep them in school.
Right,
and
absolutely.
And if it's just wearing a mask, our kids are so much more adaptable than we thought they were going to be. They've just proven to be unbelievable, and it stinks. It stinks for everyone to have to do this, but it's the safest thing to do, and it's going to keep kids in school. And I love that we're going to keep testing, and testing to stay is huge.
Right.
That makes such a big difference, because that was a huge complaint last time. If you had a contact, you were just out for 2 weeks, and we had so many in and out, and it was so hard for teachers, and students. So just being able to keep the kids here and knowing that if they wear masks, we have a chance of doing that is all I need to hear. That's our goal.
So now I have a question based on, would the test to stay, would that be for staff as well? Would a teacher be able to test and stay?
Yes, so everybody in the building actually can be involved in the program. Superintendent talked about, we'll go into more depth with it next school committee meeting.
Okay.
I think you said the
25th.
Yeah. And I'll explain that more in detail then, but it is available to everybody in the building, which is a great thing. And I think it's going to keep the students in the building, which is the most important part.
Because we had students in and out, but we also had teachers in and out, right?
Can I just piggyback on this, because I did leave a couple things out. We're in a much better position than we were. And if masks are what we're asking, compared to what our students have been through in the last 16 months,
Right.
that's an easy one in my opinion. Is it great? No. Does it get hot in the buildings? Yes. Does it get hot in our elementary schools? Yes, and I will commit that if those classrooms get to 85 degrees again in September, I'll be calling early release days. I do want to also add in that the DESE recommendation is no masking during lunches or snacks. We are going to be doing lunches outside as much as possible. A lot of things that we learned last year with all of the mitigations we did, we'll be implementing those to start off safely this year. But something you said, Mrs. Marshall, is We're not in the carding business, you know, to make it optional and be going down the hall, where's your vaccination card, where's your we're in the education business. And so to try to make it unified in that we can go back to business as usual and educate our kids and close those gaps, those learning loss gaps, that's where our focus needs to be. So I just wanted to add in a few of those things. Mrs. Raymond and I were mentioning that we didn't mention the lunches and so no mask during lunches, distancing outside when possible. We're still going to utilize the outdoor tents and the outdoor spaces. So those are all other pieces that I just thought I'd mention.
Does this mean that outdoor sports are not masked?
Sports are not, to my knowledge, MIAA has not recommended any masking.
Okay.
I would like to table any kind of sport discussion for the moment.
No, I think we will be bringing
I
that up at the
agree.
25th, yes.
Do I agree with that?
That's not the topic for this evening's forum.
But thanks for bringing that up. Mr. Jantis?
Thank you, Amy. And I just want to thank all the panelists who spoke tonight and their informative updates. And you know, I think a lot of what's been said makes a lot of sense. And you know, kind of echoing the others, I like the idea of a time, kind of a set time to revisit this and see where we are. I actually had a question about the sports too, but since you said so I think obviously the focus here has been on indoors. So I also I did want to spend a moment on the special accommodations piece that you both talked about. I have heard from a number of parents who said to me that their kids last spring, yes, they wore the mask, but it was very hard for them. You know, anxiety or claustrophobia, whatever the particular issue happened to be, it was very hard for the kids. It really took away from their educational experience. So, you know, whatever flexibility there is, I'm encouraged by what I'm hearing. I'm not sure what accommodations mean specifically, if that means an alternative to masks or something else. But I am encouraged by what I'm hearing. So, but I did want to pass along that I have heard, not from a lot, but from a few that did have that issue last spring. So
Our students aren't numbers. They're actual people, and each one is an individual that we take very seriously. And so what's an accommodation for one might be different for somebody else. And the community needs to know that that's how seriously we take our job. We all look at them as individuals. So there is not a one-size-fits-all. You have to fit into this category in order to have an accommodation. We're willing to work with families.
right, thank you for that. That's excellent to hear. And and one thing I heard Suzanne say that I had also written down was just as we kind of craft this thing going forward, just kind of delineate between the special ed category and the medical category, just so as this thing is practically applied, that it's as few questions as possible. So, right, thanks, Amy.
Yeah, I just wanted to point in, if we were going to accommodate a timeline, we should really consider about after, like maybe during the school vacation holiday time, because October's just getting into like the flu season and what would be like the RSV season, so we might want to consider that date a little bit further instead of October.
I would have a feeling that any policy discussion will have you as part of it.
Actually, sorry.
Lucky.
All set? Okay. I have a couple of questions. Not yet. I have a couple of questions. Ms. Mulcahy, do you find people forthcoming or private about their vaccination status?
Most recently, I feel people are more vocal about their vaccination status, where before people were more private with it. Just recently, once we sent that email out, we got 100 and something results back of people, saying that they were vaccinated, which is really promising. So I hope that continues. I think that some of the protocols going forward will be based off of vaccination status, and that's a key thing to inform us about.
I think one of the things that concerns me is, an incident stands out to me last year at the middle school where 2 students were dropped off at school who were COVID positive, whose parents knew that, and it was, it just felt like a smack in the face to all of the teachers, to the nurse, and so it makes me question things and how much we can put our trust in our community. So I think that's why my question to you, because that obviously plays a big factor.
I think it's important to say that we're working with the community too to keep their children in the building. So, it isn't if you are COVID positive or if you decide not to vaccinate your family, that's okay. But just inform us, keep us in the loop, because we want to keep the students in the school if we can, and we want to try to be accommodating. So don't be afraid to share.
I will say though, to be fair, in a place where vaccination rates are so high, in a state that is very highly vaccinated, that there is a stigma for people who are not, and I'm not sure how, I don't know, but I can't imagine that there would be a real, like spreading of that information. I don't know. That's my assumption. I want to acknowledge, everybody said it in different ways, but Mr. Harris, you were just so clear, in saying that anything to stop absences should be employed. And, I think our educators saw that the most last year. And, I know from my own student who was absent that it was not good. Let's see. I think what I want to do is is put out there, in addition to having the dates that we would revisit this, to have, to make sure that there are quantitative, that there's quantitative data that's worked in there and not just how we feel. So it was interesting to me, Superintendent, and I know that you polled a bigger audience than the teachers, than simply the teachers. So this question is really to you as well as to the teachers union. I was struck by the fact that when you polled your members, Ms. Buckland, that 60% felt that it should be pre-K through 12 masked, and that the other 40% fell in a couple of different categories. And I just wonder, because your 3 representatives are here, and obviously 60% is a majority, but how, do you have any data around that, or any anecdotal information? Were you expecting that, or were you expecting higher or lower?
We had put out
hold on one second.
questions than Pam did, which may have hurt us a little bit, because when we looked at the data, it was 80% that felt that pre-K through 8 should be masked. So there was more people that felt that high school, there was some more wiggle room. So we were kind of questioning too, because we were looking at some of the comments, and most of the people, while no one's thrilled, nobody wakes up every day and says, yay, let's put on a mask. I think most people recognize and said in their answers that yes, that they believed that even though that they were vaccinated, that they should be wearing masks. So I think because our survey had multiple questions and it broke it up, in many different ways, that's where we got some of the discrepancy. So pre-K to 8 was 80%, with a little more wiggle room. 19% basically we're looking at following in the encouraging unvaccinated to wear masks. But really, in the responses, it really is the majority, because if you look at, it was close to 80% of people that felt that way, with 60% feeling universal pre-K through 12. So I think had we made it a simpler poll, maybe in hindsight, looking back, we may have gotten some different responses. We only had 8 respondents that said having a choice to mask or not. That was it, out of 178.
Amy, Karen.
Go ahead.
Ms. Buckland, I don't mean to, I'm really confused about this, actually. And it's important for me, and I think all of us, to gain a little bit of a clearer understanding what the educators were thinking. Can you just maybe simplify it for us? Just what some of the questions were, because I'm a little confused by some of the numbers now.
We had broken it down into 4 different choices. And actually it was 5, because in one small piece we had left out, we had done K to 8, and then we had done pre-K through 8, which was our error. So if we were to look at our, we had a district-wide choice, masking or not masking, and 4.5%, which was 8 people, said it's your choice to mask or not. Then we had a pre-K through 8 masked with a 9 through 12 choice, and that was 16.3% that voted that way. We had a no vaccination would require a mask, and others, that was 19.7%, and then pre-K through 12 was 59.6%. So if I broke it down by the numbers, there was 178 respondents. 106 want universal masking. 29, which they chose masking for pre-K through 8. So we combine those figures, it would be 75.9 for pre-K through 8. So I think there was more people that were looking at the high school, and we're not quite sure. I think there was some confusion in the way that some of the questions were put out, because again, 60% of our members think pre-K through 12 should be masked.
So,
does that help or not help?
So I think, to be fair, you know, as you know, since this is your domain in particular is data, you know, it's very easy to put out a poll.
Right.
But it's really not.
Oh, it's
because,
very difficult.
Right.
And this is one of the problems with polling our, you know, within, is that, you know, this is a whole, you know, there's a whole science to polling.
Right.
And if you don't have the questions just right, you do wind up with
and I think the
messy
point
data.
being, I kept it much more simple. I said, and I did K to 12. I did
Yeah.
K to 12, K to 6,
Right.
optional, other.
Right.
And
What
so the
came
data
out.
was a little bit easier to, I'm not,
I mean,
this
look-
isn't my specialty. I was trying to make it easy.
I mean, look, even the data, even the poll that we did of parents in the spring, as clean as I tried to make it, was a little messy.
Right.
Because once you put an other in there.
Right. It throws everything up. All right, well.
So I want to be respectful of the bigger idea.
Absolutely.
Ms. Buckland, if you could share those numbers with us, that would be helpful. You
Yes,
know,
I will. And I did, we did, I talked to them about, with Pam, but yes, I will. I think that we made too many questions, and in hindsight, we talked about that. We had wished we had made it more simplified. And I think with 178 respondents, with 106 wanting universal masking, that's the majority. That's the highest number. I think they're really, again, it's the summertime. That's not all our members. I think that was a really great response. And I think that the numbers speak for themselves. The majority, yes, there are outliers, as there would be in any polls. And, but I think 60% is the majority, and that far outweighs the rest of the data. And so I think that speaks for itself. In hindsight, would we have made it simpler? Yes, we definitely would have.
So I want to acknowledge something that Ms. Comparato said that was a real eye-opener for me, and the idea that I think it's in 2 days that you have 120 kids coming in and out of your classroom. I have mentioned this to some of my school committee members, but I read a quote recently that said, in essence, why are we expecting our teachers to be the only employees who are in a small room with more than 30 people who are unmasked? And that, you know, if you were lawyers sitting around a conference room table, you would certainly be masked. If you were even around a conference room table, because more likely than not, you'd still be remote. So I do want to acknowledge that.
I think I just want to reiterate from the standpoint, and we've said it over and over again, I think the two goals that we can all agree on is keeping kids safe and keeping them in school. And the way to do that, and we had lots of people complaining last time, and I think everybody here reiterated it, there was in and out, that those are our goals. The ultimate goal is to keep kids safe and keep them in school. And I think listening to all the professionals here, Dr. D'Souza, the Board of Health, Amanda, that's something we can all agree on. And the union does agree with that.
Okay, I appreciate that. And in terms of accommodations, I'd also like to add in a note that it may fall somewhat underneath the assistant superintendent, but I'd also like to make sure that there's a mental health component to that, that not all accommodations are simply medical or simply, you know, somebody who has, you know, who's on an IEP or, you know, who you've identified as, that I want to make sure that.
We can look at that. I mean, obviously, emotional disability is one of the
I consider that
so depression,
yeah.
anxiety off it under.
I consider that medical. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Good.
it'd be absolutely considered.
And I think last was just my note about making sure that we commit to some of the things that we learned and were benefits last year, particularly outdoor time, and you touched on that. And, you know, I know Mr. Kohut talked about the kids at the high school eating outside and how not just helpful that was in terms of COVID spread, but how enjoyable that was.
I just want to remind the committee that we purchased lots of picnic tables, and you'll see them, particularly because of the work that's being done around the middle school drop-off area. You'll see them, they've been shifted in front of the playground, but we had a lot of dead trees in that area, grassy area. All those picnic tables are going under there. It's outdoor learning on top of the hill. So we use some of our funds to create outdoor spaces in addition to the tent areas. So getting outside, I told you one of my favorite times of the day is when they took mask breaks by my window and I could hear the talking and the laughing like things were normal. So we will continue with that. The outdoor time is very, very important.
All right, so I would like to start, unless anybody has any other questions or would like to add anything, I would like to turn now to public comment. Everybody okay? Mm-hmm. So I'm just gonna grab that.
Get the sheet.
Okay, so I see some people with their hands up on Zoom, which is great. But I'm going to begin here with Mrs. Kim Schneider. And just if you could add a little bit of information, if you're comfortable with it, in terms of what school your kids are at, what ages they might be, anything is helpful.
Absolutely. Hi, my name is Kim Schneider. I am the parent of an incoming kindergartner and a third grader at Stanley School. I also have a 2-year-old, not yet in the system. I had emailed the school committee and the superintendent a week and a half ago expressing my concern over potential changes in mask requirement guidelines. I am a supporter of masks in school. for the reasons that the experts on this panel have expressed related to ineligibility in vaccinations for children under 12, as well as this new Delta variant. So I am very happy to hear that this panel of experts has unanimously agreed the importance of masks in our school this fall, and that it's not only related to safety and health, which is very important, but also social, emotional well-being considerations as well. From my perspective, I share a very similar perspective that masks are critical to keeping our children in school and creating the least disruptive educational experience this fall, and in-person, live instruction, and see how it goes. So I just want to say I support this. I express a yes on masks, and thank you for giving me some comfort in hearing your perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I am going to go to Zoom, and I have Marianne. I would like you, if to please, I'm going to allow you to talk. If you could begin first by identifying yourself beyond Marianne.
Hi, this is Christopher Kane and Marianne Conway's husband. We're both here.
You know what? We didn't hear you. If you could repeat that.
Can you hear me? Yeah, what'd you hit?
Nothing. Could you repeat? Could you identify yourselves again?
It's Christopher Kane and Marianne Conway.
Okay, just give me a second. Christopher Kane and Marianne Connolly.
That's my wife, yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
We have a 6-year-old in Stanley going into first grade, and we have a 4-year-old going into preschool at the First Church. We are completely against almost everything we just heard. It's extremely unhealthy for the kids. You know, the stress, the anxiety around our kids having to wear a mask again is just, it's disgusting. There's several other districts that we know of surrounding towns that are not mandating masks. They're strongly recommending it, but it's not mandated. We feel that any medical decisions with our kids, it's our choice. It's not your choice. It's not the school committee's choice. It's not the town's choice. It's our choice. I know we speak for a lot of people in town, a lot of which who probably won't speak up, which is unfortunate, but that's the reality of it. I know this summer it's been business as usual. You know, we've went on vacation. We've been to weddings. We've been to house parties. Everyone we know has done the exact same thing. There's been zero mask wearing amongst the kids, adults, and there's been zero issues. And that has been all summer long. Indoor parties, etc. There's been no issues. So, you know, for this to start up again, it makes zero sense. It makes zero sense.
Right. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Did you get his last name? I didn't.
Yeah.
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 Kane?
Kane.
Kane, okay. Thank you.
Marianne Conway.
Okay, I did get that. From here in the room, I'm going to recognize Amanda. I'm going to butcher your name. I apologize.
That's okay.
Amanda Kashuba? Kashuba. Sorry about that.
I didn't really prepare anything, and I just found that as I was listening, I ended up coming up with a lot of questions. First of all, thank you for creating a forum to be heard. thank you for the last person that spoke, because I thought I was the only one. Just to give you kind of some background about myself, I have 2 children in middle school. This last year I homeschooled my son. He has a restricted airway, which we didn't even realize how bad it was until he had a mask and couldn't breathe through his nose and would have panic attacks. It brought that to our attention, and we were able to seek medical care through myofunctional therapy, orthodontist, craniosacral. I mean, we've been doing it all, and I homeschooled him. He's a extroverted kid, easygoing, loves to learn, but this flipped him out. Panic attack. And we can argue the data till we're blue in the face. I know we've heard a lot from one side, but there is a whole other side out there. But we can agree 100% of the time that when a child is wearing a mask, they have restricted breathing, okay? We need to ask questions of, does this work? These are the questions we need to ask. What are the long-term studies? There are no long-term studies on how this impacts our children. We're seeing a lot more negative studies coming out. We're looking at dental decay. We're looking at skin infections on the face. We're looking at mental, emotional, social, all of these things, right? But we're not, we talked briefly about these things. So if the pardon me, I guess what I'm asking is the same idea that medical decisions, testing, which you're talking about, which I have a lot of questions about that, masking, all of these things, it really needs to be parental choice. Every child is different. I appreciate the accommodations. And we talked about that with my kiddo. Hey, do we want to get a medical exemption? But then, you're the only kid in the back of the room without one. How's that going to go in middle school? How's that going to be supported? Will there be bullying because of that? These differences, and these are all things we need to talk about. We need to look at the survival rate. In the state of Massachusetts, no child has died a couple weeks ago. Tell me if I'm wrong. We need to look at transferability rate between children and between children to adults. That has not been mentioned today. What I've found, and please dive in and do your own research, is that it's very low. 34 positive people for the Delta variant. I'm a science background, so I worked in early phase drug development for big pharma. Before then, I went on to teach high school chemistry. That's my background. 34 people positive. So my brain, because I dive in, how are they testing to isolate the Delta variant? Okay? Can anyone tell me, because I've been searching high and low, the CDC is not law. They're not in schools. You are. You're advocating for the best of our children, and we need to look at, is this about fear and anxiety or data? Are we talking about feelings? Is this an emotional response, or are we talking about data? Okay, so one more thing is the CDC last year, we looked at numbers, right? So these 34 people, are they sick, or did they just test positive? CDC just recently released, you can find it on their website, they indicated that they were using the PCR test last year to count cases. Just recently, they came out saying that they can't distinguish between the flu and COVID-19. These are the tests we've been using to make big decisions. So I really just understand, like, we all want what's best for our kids, and I understand if we can look at some flexibility. Can we just mask in the halls when there are big groups of people, but then when they're seated, can they get a break, to breathe? The social interactions, there's no data even long term. How is this impacting our kids long term, what they've gone through in this last year? Just looking here. Thank you for your time. I think I got it. Anyway, I just had a lot of questions. Suicide rates, PCR, like all these, just if you could please look into these questions. We really need to look at this data. And I really want to understand this testing in school, what kind of anxiety that will give. Is that going to be done in the nurse's office if someone comes down and they're exposed?
You're not accustomed to the testing that we've done, so
Yeah.
at the 25th, tune into the school committee meeting.
Sure.
And we talk more about that. I appreciate that.
I just want to make sure.
No, I
Thank
totally
you.
appreciate your concern.
Anyway, thank you for hearing me.
Oh, I just wanted to say thank you. I appreciate how thoughtful your concerns are, and you know, obviously, I know that you sent us the letter that all of the members and the superintendent are in receipt of. So
Thank you.
I appreciate it, and I really
appreciate it.
I appreciate the time that you've taken to communicate with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I see.
Liz Papalato?
Yeah, 1 second. Okay, Ms. Pappalardo, I have just unmuted you.
I think you may be unmuted the wrong person. This is Vanessa Cavallo.
You are correct. I unmuted you, and if you could just identify yourself, I will get to you next, Ms. Pappalardo.
Okay. Hi, my name is Vanessa Cavallo. I have a daughter that's going into first grade in the Hadley School. First off, I want to say that I am for the children being in school full time. I think we can all agree last year was incredibly difficult. I did speak at a school committee meeting in the spring, you know, on board with them being in school full time because of the ruckus it caused in our household. But with that being said, I also do have a daughter with an immunodeficiency disorder. And I have been incredibly concerned about her starting school again in September if masks were to not be worn. We did just have our annual appointment with her immunologist at Boston Children's Hospital. She's a highly decorated immunologist, and she was telling us, advising us that my child should not be anywhere indoors without a mask or without people without masks, for her safety and for everyone else's. And so that's just where I stand. I'm for it, and I'm also for children being in school full time, and if this can mitigate them having to be remote again, like some other states and counties in the nation right now that had no mask mandates, and they are now fully remote because of that. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Let's see if I can get this right now.
But you're going in person now.
No, I'm gonna take Ms. Pappalardo since
You're confusing me.
Ms. Pappalardo, you are unmuted.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good evening. Can you all hear me? Or
Yes, we can.
I'm sorry. Hi, Elizabeth Pappalardo. So, you know, I have 2 middle schoolers and a high schooler, and I just wanted to revisit the date. I heard somebody mention they thought, I think it was, is it Amanda? I'm sorry, I don't know your last name. That we should push the date to revisit the masks back from October. I would encourage everyone to revisit this mask mandate often. Instead of saying we're going to come back to it in December, I would say come back to it in October. And then if you need to, come back to it in November, because people really, especially the high schoolers, right? They've taken, a lot of them, a big leap of faith getting this vaccine. I know my kids approached me about, you know, I want to get vaccinated. I want to, you know, do the right thing. And the message we're sending when we say, you know, okay, you took this leap of faith to protect not just yourself, but everyone around you and help stop the spread, and then say, but, you know, because some people didn't, et cetera, now you're all going to be masked. I imagine as a teenager, that's going to be a tough pill to swallow, right?
So I would just encourage everyone to revisit it earlier than December, because somebody had mentioned, well, that's during RSV or something. Well, you know, other people might pipe up and say, well, we kind of want our kids to have some RSV exposure young. You never know, because that gives them the antibodies they need for that. So that's one thing. And then the other is just remember, when you say we're here for the safety of the kids, that's of course, and I'm so glad to hear that, but so are parents. So when parents are speaking out of concern, it's because they're concerned about their kids. Some of us, you know, somebody, I think Ms. Wright said, well, if all we have to do is ask for a mask, you know, that's no big deal. And I get what you're saying, but for some people, wearing a mask is difficult for a long period of time, breathing and all that, and also just if you have sensitive skin, right, that kind of thing. So I think just, you know, revisiting early and often would be better than pushing it off to December. Thanks.
Thanks, Liz.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to come back to the room here and recognize Katie Tatt.
Hi, I'm Katie Tatt. I'm a mom to 2 middle schoolers, and I'm a school physical therapist, mostly working out of district. I did, instead of emailing you guys like I usually do, prepare something to say today because this is a very emotional topic for me, and I wanted to make sure I cover it. In order to feel safe sending my kids back to school, I'd like to see everyone, staff and students, whether vaccinated or unvaccinated, wearing masks when we return to school. I worked full-time, fully masked in a summer school program, and it was hot and uncomfortable, but it's kind of our new normal, and we got through it. Personally, our family and I have continued to be cautious wearing masks indoors, particularly when I've been around unvaccinated kids in the community, whether it's swim lessons or sports. And the reason and my why for that is that I had the unfortunate experience of attending a funeral for a child locally who died from COVID. It was very traumatizing, and I don't want to see anyone in our community have to go through that. So I can tell you for sure 100% that there are children locally who have died from COVID. I want and I'm cutting down everything I had to say because that's the point. I want what's best for all of the people who can't wear masks and can't be vaccinated. I think it's minimally uncomfortable to wear a mask for most of us, not everyone. I think it's really traumatic for many of us to lose someone to COVID. My family and I are okay with being minimally uncomfortable. I am happy and I'm grateful that we're returning to this new normal in-person education that I agree has so many academic and social benefits. And I believe it should be that we do this knowing that we did everything we could to help and support each other and protect one another if there's even a chance that this little piece of fabric is a barrier that helps us. And if that little temporary discomfort allows so many other benefits, then I think it's really worth it. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I am going to recognize, I believe it is Stella Shehu.
Hello all, good evening.
And if I mispronounced your name,
Thanks for the
please correct
opportunity.
me.
My name is Stella Shehu. I have 2 boys that will be going to Stanley this fall, 1st grade and 3rd grade. Even though I'm at home, I did prepare something tonight. And I would like to say, I heard everybody's point. You know, everybody has some valid ones. But I am here today to speak about why the choice to mask our kids this fall should be optional and left up to the parents' discretion. My first point is that for CDC, as well as our governor, masks are recommended, not mandated. According to the site, which has been updated over and over and over again, kids are not in danger of this virus. Yet we seem to want to still instill that something bad is going on and it needs to be covered. Mask up because the world is not safe. You're not safe unless you wear a mask. Recommendation is for everyone to wear a mask inside if there's increasing, substantial, or high COVID-19 transmission in our community. As you stated, 38 people were tested positive in 3 weeks. What are these numbers? ICU, resulting in death? Hospitalization and death is uncommon in children. Unfortunately, there are rare cases. There will always be rare cases with any disease. More deaths across all ages are caused from violence, suicide, mental health issues, and other terminal illnesses. But this is another conversation. Honestly, I have 2 sons. One couldn't care less if you wore a mask. My youngest, however, he cannot breathe in them. He hates them on his face. He cannot understand half of the things that his teachers say. And don't get me started on seeing their teacher enunciate a word and letters and the ability of learning to read. Incoming kindergartners will not be able to do what they should be doing as kindergartners, looking at their teachers' faces. You keep saying kids are safe because they wore masks last year. Do be advised that last year, you had almost all kids remote for at least 70 to 75% of the year. They didn't go anywhere or socialize with anyone. Most of the learning was done over Zoom, yet parents also did a lot to help their kids in achieving what they achieved. But we also know a lot of kids still needed to attend summer school this summer. This is repetitive, but Dr. Mulcahy, as you all know, himself told us that masks pretty much do not do what we think they do. The virus particles are so small they penetrate any mask, unless we're all wearing N95s daily, which we are not, and neither are our kids. We have not been wearing masks since May, and now we should tell our kids, hey, get excited for school, but first we need to muzzle you breathing for over 6 hours a day. Every day while you try to breathe through the inevitable wet and dirty masks, contrary to what life has been like over the summer months, where we've gone everywhere, traveled. Does anyone know the stats of what masks do to kids' developing immune system, lungs, and above all, their mental health? We don't have any data. We really don't. Kids not getting sick with any colds or viruses is not a win. We are making them weaker. We keep saying kids are resilient, but we in fact have no clue of the long-term damage it causes. We keep this up, mask on, mask off fiasco, and we'll find out in a few short years. Child psychologists will be busy. To get back to my point, just like you need our signatures on a permission slip, a medication release form, or even a religious exemption document on all vaccinations, the parents should make the decision together with their kids on wearing a mask. Many Massachusetts districts have already adopted this and have it as a plan for the new school year. Kids remain kids under their parents' care and instruction. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to recognize Jimmy Connor. Jimmy Connor. What was that? Not the tennis player.
How are you? My name is Jimmy Connors. I have a daughter going to kindergarten coming up, and I'm against masks. I just don't see the necessary. And it just seems like, to be honest with you, this is a waste of time, because it seems like you all have already found out what you want, because when these 3 people talked and all the people on the TV talked, you were all interested. Now, most of the time, when this young lady talked right here, people weren't paying attention. I still just don't think that masks should be worn for children. Nobody here is wearing a mask except for that lady right there, but you have 2 kids in high school over there having to wear masks, and we're all in a room, and it just doesn't make sense to me. I'm sorry, I'm not really a speaker, but I just do.
No, thank you.
And I do, the superintendent, I do think that was a good idea, that if you do have masks, I think you should do it once a month, not wait till October or November, but maybe once a month, or maybe every 15 days, something like that.
It can't be a one and done, is the point.
But I'm just saying, you said you want to revise it.
Right.
But maybe things go better, and you won't have to wear a mask. I know you guys already decided you're going to wear masks.
We have to watch the data.
Yeah, I understand that. But
No, but I'm saying, you're right. We have to watch the data and check it more frequently.
yes, but
like
I don't think
Liz
you should have a date. I
Right.
think it should be 30 days. It's 60 or 90, something that's, these things change. Okay, thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
I do want to add, even though we don't normally, and my committee members will probably kick me, particularly as a new parent to the district with a kindergartner, promising to put that date in there is really just sort of a promise to ourselves to know that at a minimum that's what's happening. But this was a topic that was revisited many times last year with constant constant watch on the data that was happening here in town. So to the superintendent's point. I am next going to recognize Miss Emily Silly, who plays a couple of roles here in town as our lead nurse, as well as a member of the Board of Health.
Mother middle schooler. Hi, everybody. Katie Tatt. First off, I just want to say hugs to you. I'm very sorry that your story gave me goosebumps. I'm sorry. I also just wanted to mention that there is the definition of a close contact. And again, trying to keep kids in school, watching what a close contact is at this point is within 3 feet. If you are masked and you are 3 feet apart for 15 minutes over a duration of 24 hours, that's a close contact. So if your child is young and unvaccinated and you are sitting next to somebody who does come back positive, then your kid's going to be out of school. So again, it's just if everybody's masked and all of our desks are 3 feet apart, then nobody has to go home. So I just wanted to kind of reemphasize that point that, if some people are masked and some people aren't, it's a much bigger task than if they aren't. Then everybody stays in school. And that's what we want. That's all. Sorry.
Thank you, Emily.
So wait, can I ask a question? So close contact has changed if you have a mask that is now...
So DESE just released their updated policies that I'm still trying to process. It's a multi-layered step, depending on if you're vaccinated, if you're unvaccinated, if you're masked, if you're unmasked, your distancing. That isn't in line with the CDC recommendation and also the Department of Public Health. The Department of Public Health still has the same stance of the close contact quarantining guidelines. So it's something that we're looking into at this time and seeing how those two will kind of mesh together and how do we keep the kids in school safe.
Okay.
And I think a key component is going to be that testing. So.
I will recognize Keiko Zoll.
Thank you. Sorry, I had just been writing my notes on my phone. Hi, Keiko Zoll. I'm the parent of an 8-year-old entering 3rd grade at Stanley. I'm more anxious about sending my son back to school in a couple of weeks than I was when he returned to fully in-person learning this past April. And that's solely because of the Delta variant's high transmissibility, particularly among the unvaccinated, of which my son is, because he is not eligible for a vaccine at this point, and also with breakthrough infections among the vaccinated. I support a universal mask mandate for grades pre-K to 12. I've heard in a number of comments tonight that it's easy to point out that children are very unlikely to die from COVID, and that while pediatric hospitalization and mortality rates are exceptionally low, I would like to raise up the issue that children are not immune to the effects of what has been called long COVID. Rates of long COVID have been estimated anywhere from 10 to 50% for children ages 6 to 16, according to several studies. Happy to email them over. And long COVID can occur in both severe or mild cases. Long COVID has been deemed severe enough that it was added as a covered condition under the Americans with Disabilities Act this July. And while COVID is not statistically life-threatening for children, it does have the potential to be life-altering, the degree to which we don't yet fully understand, given that SARS-CoV-2 is still a novel virus. Likewise, the symptoms of long COVID can impair daily functioning, particularly around mental acuity and cognition, which has obvious implications for a child's ability to learn. If a student contracts COVID, those impacts to their health are not only in the immediate, regardless of whether their illness is mild or severe, as the possibility of long COVID could impair them well beyond their initial acute infection for as long as 4 months after. While I understand that no single mitigation factor can prevent infection or complication with 100% efficacy, I am putting my trust in this committee to enact a universal masking policy that keeps every child in our district safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I have nobody left here in the room who wants to speak. I see somebody who does, so I'm going to hand this back to you so you can fill this out. But I'm going to recognize some of the people on Zoom. As I mentioned at the beginning, we are going to end this at 9, so we have 10 minutes left, and I see some more hands popping up. I will try to get to everybody. I am going to recognize Nisali. If you could identify yourself with first and last name, and my apologies if I mispronounced.
Bad connection. Move on.
Nisali, I'm going to ask if you could maybe log out and log back in. The crew team said we cannot hear you with a bad connection. So I'm going to move to Kristen Baraselli. Hold on one second. You should be able to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Maybe.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to say I'm a parent of 2 middle schoolers. One is rising to the 8th grade and the other is rising to the 6th. My 8th grader is vaccinated. My youngest daughter going into the 6th is not yet eligible. She won't be eligible until May. As a parent in this school district, I appreciate the members of the school committee, the Board of Health, the teachers union, the school nurses, the school psychologist, and the other members who are supporting this mask mandate. I believe that we all need to have our children back in school, and I know that, like other people have said before, masks do work, and to keep our children safe and in school, we need to have them masked until it is safe. So yes, I appreciate what you're saying tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Amy?
1 second.
If I may.
1 second. Okay, you go ahead. Sorry.
That's okay. Just doing some quick arithmetic. Again, I'm a kind of a wonk when it comes to this. So a couple of comments just about that. Younger children do not get diagnosed with COVID. According to the Mass website, and this is up to date as of.
I'm gonna interrupt you.
You want to wait?
Yeah, I'm gonna interrupt you because I think we should just listen.
Sure,
and we
absolutely.
This isn't the last time we're gonna speak about this. We'll come back to
Okay.
it. So, sorry. Thanks.
Don't be sorry.
Okay. I'm gonna recognize here Amy Mastrogiacomo. My Italian high school has finally come into use.
Thank you all for being here, and thank you for all your insight. My speech is a little all over the place as I wrote it when I was sitting here, but just a couple of points that I wanted to bring up. So, well, as Americans, we are very spoiled. I think that wearing a mask is inconvenient to all, children and adults alike. I don't think it's fun for anyone to wear, but I think that it's working. But perspective is something that I think a lot of people need. It's not for the rest of our lives. It's just until we can get this all under control. I think we see the light at the end of the tunnel. It's far away, but it's there. So if our children have to wear masks for 6 hours of their 24-hour day, I don't think it's going to ruin the rest of their lives. I think that having them in school is so important. Last year was a mess. We have a son who has a severe speech delay, and of course masking is not ideal for someone who's learning their speech, but having him sit in front of a Zoom call was more traumatic for me and for them than it was for him to wear a mask. So I think the upside to having them in school and inconveniently wearing a mask is just, I don't know. I'm like at a loss of words. So, I mean, COVID is a serious thing. We lost my aunt, we lost my grandmother, both to COVID. And my father-in-law also, he got COVID after being fully vaccinated. So it is a serious threat. I think that the inconveniences are just so minimal to the bigger picture of what, can happen when somebody gets the virus. So I think that is pretty much it.
Thank you. Okay, so I see three more people on the participants list, and we have 5 minutes left. I just want to give anybody the opportunity to put down their hand if they don't have something particularly different to say. In other words, if somebody else has already expressed what you are going to express, I think it's important to know that the school committee here tonight is not taking any kind of tally of how many people here or on the phone are for it or against it. That we are interested in hearing both sides, but if somebody has already expressed what you have, I have 5 minutes left, and I have somebody in my audience just giving me a note.
I could say one thing.
Please.
To what someone else said, just to make sure the record's straight. The two gentlemen in the back have been.
Could you just identify
Oh yeah,
yourself?
I'm sorry. I'm Joe Dillette. I run cable TV for the town of Swampscott, and I'm a teacher at the high school. I just felt it was important to clear the record that the two gentlemen in the back have been wearing their masks the whole time, wherever that fits in. But the gentleman that got up said that they weren't wearing masks, and I just wanted to make sure that was clear because you can't see them, but they are. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And I am going to recognize Sierra Munoz.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate the forum and all of the discussion. My son is going into kindergarten at Hadley this fall. So reiterating that I support a mask mandate in the district and putting my trust in this committee to assess the data as you have been, determine when a mandate is not necessary any longer, which of course we're all looking forward to it. And the point I want to add is that I think, yes, we can tell our children that even if you've been unmasked this summer, you have to mask up again for the fall. The pandemic isn't over, and it's also not static. Things change, and the committee is assessing newer data in this really changing battle. I also want to add that, my son has been wearing a mask at preschool for a year and has been learning and playing, and it's kept them in person, and that's what we all want. I've been teaching middle and high school students this summer in a mask, and it's hot and uncomfortable, but it's keeping the staff and students safe and in person, and that's what we all want. So I just appreciate that the committee is following the data and protecting our educational staff and our beloved children. So I appreciate the time.
Thank you. And I will recognize our last speaker as Tasia Vasilio. You can unmute.
My comment. I just want to reiterate what a lot of people have said, but just also point out that, this decision, it's not just about the kids, it's about the entire community. I have a family member who is in an assisted living facility, and so the kids going to school and bringing it home, and I visit there daily, that would have a major impact on them if I were to bring COVID to that entire facility. So this is really a decision that's for the entire community. It's not just about kids and how they react to COVID, it's about everybody. We are very happy to wear masks if it helps keep people safe. My 8-year-old is here reiterating that to me constantly. She doesn't want to say that, but she's surprised to hear that people don't want to wear masks. And we were in the ER a couple times this past few weeks, and I did speak to an ER triage nurse there who told me that he has seen many breakthrough cases coming through, people very, very sick who have been vaccinated. And 38 cases in town in 3 weeks is a significant number, in my opinion. My daughter was exposed last year on the first week that we went back to school for full time. And it is because of masks that nobody that sat next to that child that had COVID contracted it. They sat next to that child for 2 days. So thank you again for taking my comment and being supportive of masking. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Wow, it is 8:58, 2 minutes to spare. I think that was actually a good final comment. I want to point out that not only are we looking at the children in our district, but we are also the employers of more than 400 people.
Mm-hmm.
And so we do take this very seriously, which is why we felt it important to listen to all of our audience, not only our panelists, but the parents as well. So thank you for the people who have come in, and thank you for the people who attended via Zoom. Unless anybody has, on the panel, unless anybody has something else to add, I'm going to entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Any final words?
So our next step is to discuss this next Wednesday and vote on a
potential.
I mean, we have to draft the policy, read the policy, and then vote on a policy, and we're getting really close to the first day of school.
So I anticipate that, like the springtime when we had to call up a special session, that we'll need to do that in order to vote in time for the students and teachers to be back to school. I anticipate a fair amount of work to be going on behind the scenes over the next week. on our policy subcommittee.
Wow.
Well, next week, could we vote on a general direction and then actually vote on a specific policy, or would
kids come back, teachers are back.
Well, I know,
Right.
I
think
mean,
this has to be pretty quick, actually,
Yeah.
to be honest with you.
And if Mrs. Mulcahy could be involved in the subcommittee, the policy subcommittee, that would be great. But I think it's going to have to happen fast.
So I think that the work has to be done in the subcommittee and then brought to the committee for discussion, edit.
Sure, but so if we could bring something to our meeting on Wednesday night, like a draft of a policy, or, I mean, we don't even know which.
but we didn't even decide on a
haven't even
direction.
decided
Do you know what I'm saying?
Direction, so we need to decide the direction. I think that, well, we can draft a policy and then decide a direction. I mean, we can draft something, but and then have a first read and then have a Thursday night meeting too. Might as well post it Wednesday and a Thursday night meeting.
Or you could draft 3 policies
Yeah.
so that it comes before the committee on the 25th. And the direction, whether it's optional, whether it's K-12, pre-K-12, whether it's pre-K-8,
Right.
those should be ready to go with language so that the first read can occur on the 25th and then followed up by a special session for.
So you want 3 policies drafted?
But it would be the same, but it would be the same policy, but with one
Yes,
step.
But it-
John,
yes, it
you got
would-
anything else to do?
It would technically be just words.
No, I know what you're
words.
saying, I know what you're saying, yeah.
We're not recreating policies, so.
Right.
Yeah, we have.
I'm just thinking for
yeah.
timing, we
No, I
have
know
to
what
have
you're
them ready to go because the first read's going to occur on Wednesday.
So let's just agree, it's gonna be a full district-wide policy, K-8 policy,
And then optional.
and then an optional.
Which would be a
policy.
full district policy.
No, but she's
No,
saying.
full,
No, no,
a
no,
full
I
district
understand,
mandate,
but it would be a full district
optional.
optional.
Okay. I think we're all saying the same thing.
Yes,
Yeah, we are.
we are.
Are we all agreed that, can we all meet on Thursday as well? Are we
I think we'd
available?
have to.
I think we'd have to.
I mean, I just want to make sure we'll have a quorum.
Yes, I'm sure.
If it's just a vote if we can just meet to have a public discussion vote after we
Okay.
meet on Wednesday?
Okay,
I mean, do we even need a second read? is the
we
question.
do.
No, that's what I'm saying, if we do a first read on Wednesday, we can do we can
We
vote
can
on the
vote
second
on
read.
So technically,
vote
we
on
do need to
Thursday.
have a second read. But as in the spring, when we had it, we held, I don't think it was technically called an emergency session, but we, once the mask mandate was lifted, were you part of us
That's
at that
the very
point?
end.
When we voted on it, but then we had to come back and take an official vote in order to make it policy, because it has to go through that process.
Like,
Well, it doesn't really have to, per se.
what process?
I mean, I guess my question is, given the dates and the time and the amount of work that the subcommittee has to put in, couldn't we, and I'm asking, I'm not telling, couldn't we discuss it that evening and just vote on it? I mean, there's nothing legality-wise that says we have to have a second read. We always want to do that. I mean, that goes back years and years. But given the timing of this, do we really need to do that?
Yeah, I think there is a reason why we have to have a second, there is a reason why we have to have a second
So
read.
I will,
I think it's about feedback.
I will
Okay.
reach out to our attorneys tomorrow.
No, I'd probably ask Dorothy.
Dorothy Presser? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay. We'll find out if in fact
I
that's the
mean,
case.
again, I'm fine either way. With 2 meetings, or it doesn't really matter to me. I'm just saying that,
You're just trying to expedite it.
just trying to
Right,
expedite
right.
the process, that's all.
But I also want to be, I want to be mindful that there are processes and that, I don't want to start to open the door of, deciding when.
I completely agree with that as well.
Make sense? Okay. So I will take a vote to adjourn. I think that I still need to do a roll call since it is a hybrid meeting. So, Mr. Pastor?
Yes.
Yes.
Ms. Kitty?
Yes.
Yes.
And I am a yes. It is 9:05. We are adjourned.